right, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the meeting. We're gonna go ahead and get started. Margaret, I'm gonna let you go first and give your DHHS updates.
Okay, great. Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine.
All right, I always like to check. Thank you and good afternoon, everyone. Just a few updates that I want to provide. We will be issuing, if it hasn't gone out today, it is in our final review. So I expect that it will be forthcoming shortly. We've prepared a bulletin related to flexibilities that were put in place during the public health emergency related to under the Appendix K authorities. So we will be issuing this to provide guidance. We evaluated along with our partners at DDSN all of our Appendix K flexibilities to determine any that may continue past the PHE and those that would end no later than 6 months after the expiration of the federally declared public health emergency. So the federal PHE ended on May 11th. So that puts 6 months after that expiration at November 11th, 2023. The bulletin will go into detail on those flexibilities that were put in place. It does have a rather large chart because we were trying to communicate for all 8 of our home and community-based waivers, which flexibilities were in place for which waivers and those that would be ending. So it outlines, again, for those that flexibilities that were put in place, the ones that we will be unwinding between now and November 11th, 2023. We'll be working closely with DDSN, and they will be working closely with you on those unwinding processes as we move through the next 6 months. So wanted to make mention that that will be coming. We also, just a quick update, we have the renewal for the head and spinal cord injury waiver, as well as multiple amendments to other waivers pending right now with CMS. One of those main updates that we're putting into the waivers is a consolidation of personal care and nursing services. The purpose of those changes is to help with administrative burden to assist providers with their ability to issue authorizations as needed for those services. So going forward upon CMS approval, we have requested July 1. We will be providing updates should that date change, but our intent is to consolidate into one single personal care service. And then we will also consolidate nursing services into one waiver nursing service. This will allow for providers to authorize nursing and allow them to staff those hours as they need with either RN or LPN based on the duties being performed and the Nurse Practice Act. So those are other items that are upcoming. Wanted to also let everyone know that we're doing our best here at the agency to get out of the building and do some visits. So we will be scheduling and coming out to do some tours of your programs. We want for your staff to know us. We would like to meet your staff, have the opportunity to really see what it looks like with services being delivered in action. So we are scheduling some of those visits. Again, our intent is to make sure we know the provider network and that we get a better sense of what it looks like day in and day out. So coming soon to an area near you. And then finally, wanted to give a quick update, and I believe this will lead into DDSN's portion of the meeting. We did work collectively with staff at DDSN on the critical incident directive that was recently out for public comment. We made the decision based on the amount of comment and the nature of those comments, to pause with moving that forward until we had a moment to reassess. It is part of our reported plan in response to an OIG audit. So we did not make that decision lightly, but we do want to take into account the multiple comments that were submitted, take a step back, work collectively with our partners at DDSN and with the provider network to ensure that our intended goal of providing guidance that is readily understandable, that provides clarification is the end result. So we did put press pause to work through some of those comments. Thank you for those that provided those. Again, just wanted to give a brief update on the pause. We'll be working actively to come to the table and do some revisions based on those comments.
All right, Margaret, there's a couple of questions out there for you. I don't know if you want to answer those before I take over. Do you see them or you want me to?
I see them. So I will be following up. I do not have a specific update on cost reporting. That's something that I do know our finance department is working on. So I will follow up with them to see if we're any closer to a timeline. And then there was a separate question on billings related to the retro payment. So I will also be happy to take that to our finance department. If there are any individual providers that need to follow up, I'll be sure to get your question to the right folks. But more globally, I'll be glad to take that question forward.
All right, I'm going to just jump in next because I think everything that I wanted to talk about today kind of piggybacks on some of Margaret's items. So the first thing was around the bulletin that's going out related to the ending of the PHE. I just wanted you guys to know that there's going to be a lot of work done here to try to unwind the flexibilities that we implemented in the Appendix K. We will give information out that please do not stop any of those flexibilities until you get information about what to do with them. So that information will be forthcoming. Kind of the first thing that we're doing is stopping any new entry, so that's kind of the first thing you've seen. There's been a couple memos that have gone out related to that effect. The other thing to know is it's not really Appendix K, but it is related to the PHE. It's the Medicaid eligibility reviews resuming. For residential providers, you guys got a full list of people who you can expect to be reviewed during the coming year from me. Case management providers got that from Lisa Woods. In addition, HHS is sending us a list of reviews the month prior. So the June review list we got last week. Lisa Woods is currently in the process of sending that out. She is sending an email to the residential provider for people who live in residential and to the case management provider for the case manager for the person. So like the residential folks end up on both lists. I just want to make sure that people are paying a lot of attention to that. It's super important. A loss of Medicaid eligibility is going to affect you specifically very differently than it has in the past because DDSN's always just kind of floated when we had people who were reapplying and we knew they'd be eligible retroactive to the first day of the month and in which they applied. And those are some things that you guys are going to have to pay very particular attention to. So I just want you to be aware of that. Margaret talked about the consolidation of nursing and personal care. We are intending to complete that consolidation electronically for all case managers. So we have a plan in place for anybody who is getting those services to do kind of an end of a funding line on a plan and an add of a new line, as well as the ending of the old auths and the issuing of the new auth on July 1. We will have a training rollout before it happens, because obviously after July 1, any new service is going to be assessed a little bit differently. But for the most part, there's not going to be a big scramble for case managers at the last minute trying to end, add, reissue auths. Related to the critical incident policy, as Margaret said, we have paused it. Right now, we're kind of planning to get together with HHS to review the comments and figure out kind of what we, how we want to approach some of what the comments and concerns are. We plan to get it in front of providers at some kind of focus group or something prior to it going out for public comment, but I did want you to know that it will go back out for public comment before it goes back to the policy committee. So you should have ample opportunity to, address any concerns that you have. And that is all from me. So Quincy, I think it's your turn.
So I had a couple of questions submitted. So there was one about submitted about providers no longer receiving annually redacted internal audit reports or redacted copies of findings of the external auditors. So it was communicated by providers that there was a desire for the practice of sending these out to be resurrected. I spoke with Courtney Crosby this morning, and I was informed that there are plans to resume these summary reports of the CPA and internal audit findings. The agency is currently recruiting for the position that will be responsible for tracking these findings. And the goal of internal audits is to issue summary reports for any 2023 findings. So hopefully this year that process will restart. We also received a question in regards to standing up a grant program for technology. As of now, there are 2 approved funding conduits for grant awards. The first would be the commission approved cooperative training grant program. This was approved as a multi-year funding in the amount of $1 million during the November 17th commission meeting, and it was intended to help providers with the evolving labor market changes. The goal of it's 2-faceted. The staffing grant program was encouraged for the development of sharing full-time staff that's hired for common administrative functions such as accounting and human resources. And then the other grant program was a training grant program that would offer providers the opportunity to share knowledge, promising practices, and offer the chance to problem solve with other professionals. The aim at both of these shared grants was to encourage collaboration between providers where it's not appropriate for DDSN to provide. To update you on where we are, the agency has had a lot of competing items that kind of came up with PhD ending and placement. So we're getting this back on the list, and hopefully we'll be issuing something soon on that. The second type of grant award that we have approval for is outlined in Title 44, Chapter 21, Section 60 of the SC Code of Law, and the verbiage in Policy 250-12-DD, as well as that code speaks to the Family Support Services funding. The services in the Family Support Program include, but are not limited to, family support service coordination, information, referral, advocacy, educational materials, emergency and outreach services, and other individual and family-centered assistance services. The code specifically states that respite care, personal assistance services, child care, homemaker services, minor home and worksite modifications and vehicle modifications, specialized equipment and maintenance and repair, specialized nutrition and clothing and supplies, transportation services, health-related costs not otherwise covered, licensed nursing and nurses aid services, family counseling, training and support groups, financial assistance, emergency services, and recreation and leisure needs are specifically stated that those are covered in a grant award. So if providers' grant proposals fall within the scope of those two funding conduits, DDSN will be able to move forward. If they're outside of that scope, they will require at the very least a policy amendment that will require commission approval, and depending on the award amount, that could also require a commission approval. So I said a lot for that one question, but I felt like it was necessary for you guys to know what we can offer right now. And if your grant proposal falls within that, you guys can reach out to us. We can answer that specifically. So that's all I have. Are there any questions that came in, Lori?
Can you post those grant solicitation links on this board? We don't have the solicitations.
No, yeah.
We have, actually,
For the
the
family
family
support,
support is up
yes.
from last year, but not this year,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Or is it up for this year?
It should be up for 23, I would think. I'll look.
I don't know.
You don't know if it's, okay, I'll look and see.
Once we get them, something will go out. That's it.
Did me?
You're up next, Jen.
You're up, Janet.
So we had a question about the legislation that passed last May about sub-minimum wage and the Employment First Initiative Act. So just kind of an update, one of the requirements was that beginning January 1st of 2023 and annually thereafter, DDSN would submit to the General Assembly a report about the payment of sub-minimum wage. We did submit that report in January of this year. There is a task force that is to be stood up, I guess is a way to say it, a task force on eliminating sub-minimum wage. The legislation talks about who should be a member of that task force. DDSN has submitted suggestions for the names of those to be represented on that task force. Obviously, not all of them are DDSN appointees or suggested appointees. And at this point, I honestly am not sure who's taking the lead on this, but we have submitted our names. And as we hear more information, we will let you know.
Yeah, so there's a question out about state salary increases as it relates to the providers. Margaret, I think that's probably something you need to take back, because it's a rate issue at this point.
Yes, I'll be glad to take that back.
Okay, that's it. Anne.
All right, so for providers of residential habilitation delivering SLP1 services, there was a memo that went out recently talking about the need for the SLP1 assessments to be completed on an annual basis. Just as a reminder, the directive for certification and licensure 104-01 was updated earlier this year. If you are opening a new SLP1 setting, you need to complete the application to operate as well as the SLP1 assessment. If you're moving someone from one apartment to another, you need to complete the application to operate and the SLP assessment. And then for people who continue to remain in their apartments or in their homes, you need to complete that SLP assessment on an annual basis. That assessment is completed in lieu of the annual licensing inspection by Lion. So it's very important that you have that inspection up to date, because that is what allows you to bill for that SLP1 support, making sure that that person is appropriately placed. So I want to remind everyone that we are continuing to participate with the National Core Indicator surveys. The in-person surveys are well underway. Many thanks to the providers that have assisted us in that process with completing the background surveys and any coordination in scheduling those in-person interviews. I also want to remind everyone that the State of the Workforce Survey, formerly known as the Staff Stability Survey, is also out. Many of you have received reminders recently. If you have not completed that survey, please make sure that everything is posted by June 30th. I always use this time to include a few reminders about incident management. Today, I wanted to talk about the fact that we have got to improve our compliance with A&E training for new and existing employees. This is one of our performance measures for all 3 of the DDSN operated waivers. It's an area where our performance statewide is well below what it should be. Statewide, we're looking at a 70% compliance rate for new employees that are going through orientation, and 68% statewide for employees that have been on the job for 12 months. So we have to get these numbers up. There is training available on the DDSN website. You guys have access to the videos. The test is available through business tools. It's there for you. We need to make sure that it is happening at the required timeframes. As a suggestion for that annual training compliance, many providers will schedule annual training during a designated month. Often that's either in January or July, but it doesn't have to be. But they will run everybody through training at that one designated time. Even if the person is a relatively new employee and just came on board, they may have their next version of the training, 2 or 3 months later, but it keeps everybody on schedule and keeps that cycle going so that you're not running into compliance issues. It's just very important that we continue to show improvement in that area. Another area that we continue to work on is the submission of timely reports for initial A&E and critical incident reports, as well as final reports. We're well below where we want to be, so we will continue our office will continue reaching out to you to improve compliance in that area. The third area has to do with the quality and content of reports. I know in reviewing comments related to the incident management directive, there was feedback regarding training. We are happy to provide training to providers about what needs to be included in the reports. But the simple answer is to be sure that you're answering the who, what, when, where, and how about each individual incident. Make sure that your statements match, the description that's being provided in the narrative of the incident. We receive a lot of reports where details from one document to another simply do not match. So everything that you're attaching needs to be very clear. We also want to remind you that as you're going through this process, we have to close the loop. And as the executive director or designee submitting that report, when you're signing off in that report with your electronic signature, you're attesting that the report is complete and accurate. So make sure that those who are interested with that level of review are going back and taking a look at those documents to make sure that everything matches. Finally, I just want to throw a comment out there. If you have not heard about the CMS proposed access rule, or if you've not read up on it, I would strongly encourage you to do so. There's a lot of information out there about changes to critical incident reporting, which would include abuse, neglect, and exploitation, as well as death reporting. It would include changes to payment for providers, for improving transparency. There's a lot that is covered. Again, it is the CMS access rule, and you can find that information on the CMS website. And that's all for me.
No questions? Harley?
So I just have a few quick communications updates. The first is that this week we will be sending out a memo. It will be the call for Golden Palmetto Award nominations. So again, these are, the Golden Palmetto Award is awarded to a county government. And so it's up to the providers to submit those nomination letters. The information in the memo that'll be coming out will contain the process for submitting that nomination. And the nominations will be due on Friday, June 30th. So just keep your eyes open for that memo that will be coming out this week. I also wanted to address The listening sessions, one was held last week on Thursday, and there is another scheduled for this afternoon from 6 to 7 p.m. These listening sessions are being coordinated, scheduled, and facilitated by our strategic planning vendor, Sage Squirrel Consulting. So while it is information pertinent and important to DDSN, we did not schedule them. We suggested making the times variable and the days of the week variable in the hopes that the most people would be available to attend. We understand that there was an issue with one of the links. We sent out the corrected link almost immediately after the issue was found. So apologies about that. It's a technical issue that we tried to address, and the link was sent out again this morning. I received comments about how information didn't get out to people, but I do want y'all to know that this is not the only opportunity to provide input. Person supported and or their family members are welcome to reach out to Erica Robbins directly. Lori is going to put her email address in the chat. And so as providers, y'all are welcome to pass that information along to person supported and their families. And if you have not spoken with Erica and would like to provide input, you're welcome to reach out to her directly. Again, the listening sessions are for person supported and their families. The last thing I have on my list is that Lori said that she would be working to schedule a provider forum or focus group meeting in June. And so I'll be reaching out once she gets her list of who's going to be coming to that meeting. I will be reaching out to schedule that with the providers that are on that list. So just expect that to be coming an in-person focus group session where we will be having conversations. So that's it for me. Please reach out to me if you have any questions or need additional information. Are there any questions right now?
Don't have any questions. Okay, well, I don't have any questions, so we appreciate everybody attending today. Again, as a reminder, make sure that you send any items that you'd like to have on the agenda the Friday before this meeting, which is always the Monday after the commission meeting, right? So it's kind of easy to target when it's going to be. It's good if we have that information ahead of time so that we make sure that these meetings are good for you guys as well as us to put information out. So, all right. Thanks everybody for coming.